What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show, and we have a lot of volleyball to get into, as we have ourselves a guest on today's show. Unless you have been living under a rock, we have ourselves a big-time guest, and you're not going to want to miss this episode. We also have some NCAA men's volleyball to discuss, such as UCLA beating Long Beach State not once, but twice. Man, that was such a big pair of wins for those gutty little Bruins. Also, how about UC Irvine bouncing back in a big way against Pepperdine? And Lewis, the Flyers, taking down... those nice little Ball State Cardinals in EIV action. And don't forget about Ohio State. Can't let those guys get hot now. Also, we have some NBA news, and we also have some VNL talk as their schedule just got released. So hand me a volleyball, step the net, because I'm about to start up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday evening, Monday afternoon, Monday, wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have tuned in to episode 181 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, we have ourselves a special guest. He is the head men's volleyball coach at Penn State, and he was the head coach that guided those Nittany Lions to the NCAA Men's Volleyball Championship in 2008. And overall, he is just an amazing guy. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, introducing the one, the only, Mr. Mark Pavlik. How you doing, Mark?
Well, after that intro, I think the check should be in the mail, Teran. Thank you so much for inviting me to spend some time with you.
Hey, no problem, Mark. I appreciate you being on. Thank you for taking time out of your night. I know it is a little past 9 o'clock where you're at in Pennsylvania, but I appreciate you taking time out of your night. It really means a lot. But with all that said and done, let's get on to that volleyball action. But first and foremost, before we continue, these are the thoughts and opinions of myself, Teran Rodriguez, and Mark Pavlik, and not the thoughts and opinions of Penn State University, the NCAA, or National Collegiate, as you new kids like to call it, or IE Sports Radio, or any other third or fourth party organizations. So with all that said and done, Mark, the floor is yours. Tell all these listeners who you are, what you do, and how you got into volleyball.
Oh, how I got into volleyball. Well, I was a frustrated basketball player, and our high school had a boys volleyball team. I went to high school in Pennsylvania, Western PA, and I don't know how familiar the listeners are with Pennsylvania high school boys volleyball, but Pennsylvania, it has the longest-running state-sanctioned boys high school championship in the country. We actually started in 1933, so there's been a tradition of boys volleyball throughout the state. And my high school coach had started our program. Was also the PE teacher. Ended up seeing me in PE class and IMs playing different sports, and just said, "Hey, why don't you give volleyball a try?" So I did, and from that point on, most of us fell in love with the sport. I was fortunate enough to have a couple of our high school alums playing at Penn State. Graduated in 1978 from high school and made my way to State College, and was on the team my freshman year, and then my junior and senior year, I managed the team, and I think I got more playing time as a manager than I did as a freshman player. And the team at that point was coached by Tom Tate, who took the program from club to varsity in 1977, and just started to grow the sport not only at Penn State but across the state of Pennsylvania, and just keep refining it and moving the bar higher and higher. Decided when I came out of school, my degree was ceramic science and engineering. And, ended up making a career change about 1986 or so, and ended up going back to Indiana University, PA, and helping out their women's program, coached by Kim Johnson Walker at the time, and then ended up moving over to Juniata at the same time that I was in State College after Coach Tate retired. Tom Peterson took the reins, and right place, right time, assistant coach for Penn State men, making a whopping, I think, $5,000 a year, and then also making $1,000 a year in the fall, helping out Juniata College and Larry Bach with the women, and basically Teran being supported by the First National Bank of Grandma. And then things just kind of broke from there, and next thing you know, I'm head coach and found places to hide in Rec Hall that they can't really find me to get rid of me. So it's been a very interesting ride. It's been great to be giving back to the alma mater, but I don't think I'm much different than probably anybody else that came up in the same era that I did with and moved into coaching.
That's amazing. Amazing stuff. And I never knew that about Pennsylvania and the high school volleyball scene there. That's quite fascinating. All right. So that's quite interesting. So who are some of your coaching influences when it comes to the sport of volleyball?
Well, certainly the big three. Rich Shaw, my high school coach, whose three sons played at Penn State for us. All three were captains, and you might know some of their... probably the middle one, Mike Shaw, who was his longtime assistant at UNC, and he was Russ's assistant at Penn State for a while. The oldest son, Jim, is coaching boys and girls high school here in Pennsylvania, and the youngest son, Dan, has won, 6 or 7 state championships in Pennsylvania and with North Allegheny High School. And so his sons and his influence goes very deep with me. Kind of got me on started. Came back and helped him out at one point right before I started with IUP, and fortunate enough to be around a great group of guys where our high school won our first state championship in 1986, finished runner-up in 87, and won again in 88. Had some pretty decent players then, and so Rich was a big influence. And then Tom Tate at Penn State continues to be probably the most major influence with coaching collegiately, and he just was a track guy, was an all-ACC high jumper when he was at Maryland, and decided that he coached some track here at Penn State, and was asked to help out with the volleyball club, and decided if they wanted a coach, he was going to be a coach and not a babysitter, and developed his own philosophy and how to coach and how to train, and kind of came up into that. And the third one of the coaching triumvirate was Larry Bach. And, Larry has got the most amount of collegiate wins in NCAA history. He's won over 1,300 matches with the women and another 100 matches with the men when he coached Juniata, and over 1,400 wins in the country that hasn't been surpassed yet. So I got to coach with Larry for 5 years. Larry, in fact, was best man in our wedding, and we've had a lot of great times together on and off the court.
That's awesome. That's a great plethora of influences right there. All right, before we head on into last season, obviously you being at Penn State, did you ever have any interactions with the legendary Russ Rose, who obviously coached a long time for the women's program at Penn State?
My sophomore year at Penn State was Russ's first year coaching the women, so our paths crossed quite frequently. And, what he did with the women's program and the success he had and the group of athletes that he had together were awfully fun to watch. And, those were times where you look at the Alicia Glass setting and Hodges, and it was so much fun to watch them play. And Russ and his staff, whether it was Michael Shaw, whether it was Steve Aird, whether it was Dennis Hohenschel, those guys that I had worked with either as players or coaches, it's been fun to watch them develop also. So yeah, we've crossed paths a lot with Russ. He was just down the hall from our office.
Excellent. That is awesome to hear. All right, now let's jump on into last season. So, for listeners out there, I had the Princeton men's volleyball coach, Sam Schweisky, a month ago, and this was before the NCAA men's volleyball season began. So, for Mark in Penn State, we're going to just hop in our time machine and go back one season and discuss a little about last year. So, last year, Mark, your team got off to a fairly good start. You took down BYU and Grand Canyon both times, and then you went on a California road trip. You was a little shaky the first three matches. The Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge wasn't a little too kind to you. Then the Battle of the Bigs wasn't too kind to you in the first match. And in the second match, you ended off in a emphatic positive note. So, in those first 8 matches, what do you think you all learned in those first 8 matches as that prepared for you in terms of the AIVA and other non-conference games against Ohio State?
Well, I think it showed for our team that there's a resiliency that's needed. We traveled across the country 4 times in 8 days. And I think that the way men's volleyball is looking this year, and probably in the last 10 years, it's getting tougher and tougher to travel like we travel and still be able to try to make an impact in somebody else's gym. So I think that was one of the things that we learned early on, that we were capable of playing the game at a pretty good level that would cause any team to have to play at a pretty high level for a pretty long time, to get a win. But we also knew that we were capable of making some plays here and there would make it easier for teams to win. And I think whenever we traveled up to the year, we were good until the clock hit about 10 p.m. out there. The body clocks were about 1. And then you could just see our execution start to drop off. And then when we went back out the second time, we were still trying to recover from the 2 trips back and forth across the country. And Santa Barbara, I just love Rick McLaughlin's team. They play the game the right way, the way it should be played. And they just tore us apart, which then 2 days later we go down to Long Beach and play really well. So we knew we were capable of putting together some high-level volleyball for a long time. The question would be, could we do it throughout the season? Could we keep everybody healthy? But those were basically what the 2 things that we knew the preseason, the January season volleyball showed us.
Now, during that Long Beach State men's volleyball match, a few things happened. First of all, you and I first met, and second of all, Toby obviously went off. Toby Ezionu went off, and obviously you got some good contributions from Brett Wildman, and you got some contributions from Cole Bogner and Cal Fisher. What can you say about last year's team and how its returners made a great contribution and how they're eager to basically make a big impact for this year's team?
I think last year they just continued the evolution that they had started back in their freshman year, in 19 and 20, and I've got the whole COVID issue there, and then those guys have just kept getting better. They walk into the gym every day. They walk in, they have a great attitude. They're a lot of fun to be around in the gym. They work hard. And I think that what we saw at Long Beach was just, you saw a snippet of what these guys could be over time. And their challenge is to keep doing that at a high level and with a consistency that it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the net, they're going to be who they are.
Great point right there. And I like that little saying, doesn't matter who's on the other side of the net. And that's a very true statement. So after that win over Long Beach State, you kicked off EIVA play. And I remember a quote that you told me last year. The EIVA is not like your grandfather's EIVA. What can you say about the EIVA and how it continues to get better and better over time?
Yeah, and certainly the EIVA is an example of that, but also I think you could use that across the board in the MIVA, and you can use that with the new teams coming up. There was a time, maybe 15, 20 years ago, that you knew there were gyms that you had to be in because they were in your league, where as long as you were physical and you served the ball well enough, and you knew there were going to be stretches where ball control would break down for the opposing team. Now, everybody touches the ball better than I think ever before. I think there are guys out there. Every team has one. Big, strong dudes that can jump high, hit the ball hard, be physical with it, and they're going to score points. Now, can you minimize your crucial error times? When you get a chance to swing for a point, you don't make the volleyball. Can you minimize those opportunities while forcing them into some situations where they have to abdicate their physicality? I think that's really where the game has come from, or come to now from 10, 15 years ago. And I just think that, like I said, New Jersey Tech, Princeton, Harvard, Mason, Charleston, they all have boys that can hit the ball, and they all have boys that can pass the ball. It's going to be fun here to see where the men's game starts to really develop with all the different leagues that are popping up, and more opportunities for kids to come out and play and develop and play a level of game that with the physicality the way it is in the men's game right now, we're going to be in another 5 to 10 years. So, yeah, it's not your grandfather's EIVA anymore, or MPSF, or MIVA. So, but it's fun to play.
I see. So, before we get on this is more EIVA talk, you have a pair of non-conference games you love to play against, and it's technically against a Big Ten foe, but they're not really a Big Ten foe, and they're not in your conference. It's against Ohio State. So, obviously, they're not technically Big Ten material. They're not technically in the Big Ten because there is no Big Ten in NCAA men's volleyball. But what can you say about the rivalry between Ohio State and Penn State in men's volleyball, and what can you say about Kevin Birch's team, Coach Kevin Birch's team?
Well, we know that we are in the Big Ten. We know that Kevin's roster, our roster, are surrounded by people who want to take care of their student athletes in the best way possible, from medical to nutritional to performance psych-wise. These guys who play volleyball for the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions go to classes, hang out with other student athletes from their athletic department, and they hear the stories about the Wisconsin game, the Michigan game, whoever they play, whether it's the women's teams playing each other, whether it's the men's ice hockey teams, whether it's the lacrosse teams. And we're so steeped in Big Ten aura with within the athletic department here that any time you can get the Nittany Lion logo and the Buckeye logo on a court together, it means something to those guys on the court. They are experiencing something that they've only heard talked about by the rest of their peers in their athletic department. And I think the Penn State-Ohio State matchup, Kevin and I have talked about it. Pete, Hansen, and I believed it. And as long as I'm the head coach at Penn State, we will always have our Big Ten season. Right now it's only 2 matches. But you never know with UCLA and SC joining the Big Ten where men's volleyball in the Big Ten can go. So I think it's something special. I think men's collegiate volleyball needs matchups like that, and I think it's 2 schools that really believe in their athletic departments and what their athletic departments can do for their student athletes. Kev has won every place he's been at. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to make his mark at Ohio State. And, just enjoy playing with him, enjoy talking with him, and just so glad he's part of the NCAA men's volleyball landscape out there.
All right, jumping back to EIVA play. So obviously you all ran the table in conference play, but unfortunately you all met an unfortunate end to the regular season in terms of the EIVA tournament as you fell to Princeton in the semifinals of the EIVA tournament. Tell me, how tough is it to beat a team 3 times in one season, and what do you think Princeton did in this matchup as opposed to the previous 2 matchups?
Well, I think one of the things that goes with beating a team 3 times, I think they get to know you, you get to know them, and that 3rd time, there's no surprises. So we knew Princeton was a dangerous team. Ben Harrington was really starting to develop as the season went on last year, and he was surrounded by a couple of seniors that had played us tough through their career. It really boiled down to a couple of opportunities that we didn't convert on versus a couple of opportunities they did convert on. So, Sam had him ready to play. And, his guys are always ready for us, and I think it's a pretty healthy rivalry that's been developing between the Tigers and the Nittany Lions.
So last year, and this will be the last question for last year. Last year, unfortunately, you all fell just short of making the NCAA tournament, but you all found out that some of your guys were coming back, like Cole and Cal and Brett. Like, did they have that little, they left a lot of meat on the bone mentality, or did they have unfinished business to attend to, or what was the mentality for those guys?
I think for them, they had made the decision back when the NCAA came out in 2020 and said, hey, look, we're going to give a COVID year for those that had lost the full year of competition in 2020. And I think, with the success that those 3 in particular had been having, it just made sense for them to continue to do it. And, they've been, all 3 of them have, I think, just continued on with doing what they wanted to do academically here and making sure that happens. Brett's going to get a graduate degree this year, and so is Cole. It's going to be real interesting to see over the course of all the NCAA how the extra COVID year that has been granted to the athletes, how that has paid off for them academically too. I think I'm willing to bet we're going to see more kids who exhaust their eligibility come out with advanced degrees than ever before.
All right, so jumping back into our little time machine and going back into the present day. So as for this year, we also found out that we got the AVCA Top 15, and we're going to just break down this right now, as we'll go 1 through 5. So 1 through 5 is basically a little bit more of the same, as Hawaii still number 1, UCLA coming out with those 2 big wins against Long Beach State, number 2, your Penn State Nittany Lions, number 3, Long Beach State down to 4, and Grand Canyon number 5. So back to your Nittany Lions. So you all have had a fantastic season, as your lone loss was to Long Beach State. So what do you all think you could have done in that match against Long Beach that you just didn't do against the Beach a couple weeks ago?
I'm not restate that question again, Teran. I'm not sure what you asked me there. It's late here. I probably should have been in bed about 2 hours ago, so I apologize.
It's all good. So what do you all think you could have done in that matchup against Long Beach State that you unfortunately did not do?
Oh, no, I think that it was a heavyweight fight. I mean, I think you look at the scores, we were pretty much reached 20 first in the match, and from 20 to 25, Long Beach, I thought, dialed up their execution a little bit more crisply than we did, and I think you looked at some hitting errors that we made and passing breakdowns, and maybe our service pressure backed off a little bit, but I don't think there was anything big. I think that's the way the men's game is going to go. And if you give a good team 2 or 3 opportunities to score a real point after 20, it's going to be real tough for you to win.
Got it. And then fast forwarding one more week after that, you were able to take down UCLA and USC, but mainly UCLA. I saw bits and pieces of that match before I had to head off to work. That UCLA win was quite impressive because that was UCLA's first loss of the season. So what did it take to beat UCLA, and how were you all able to slow down their top hitters and capitalize off of their mistakes?
Well, I'll use the same thing that I just said about Long Beach. I think we played a team that plays big boy volleyball, and that was as physical a weekend. And if you throw Long Beach in, who we played 10 days before, and then Stanford and Pep, who we played a couple of days before we played Long Beach, that stretch of 5 matches felt like we had 5 heavyweight prize fights in there. There were guys that were swinging at balls that were, you look up on the radar display and watch Ido David hit 71, 72 miles an hour, and it's like, oh boy, this is a lot of fun, and it's really physical, and I thought our guys responded real well to that. I thought we served the ball well. We kept pressure on them. We were fortunate enough to turn some points in some key situations, and I don't think I think it's a very fine line. You get good physical teams together, and all it can take is 1 or 2 points here or there that enable you to run another point. I'm a big believer, if you can get 3 points, side out, score a real point, score another real point, you get enough of those 3-point runs, you put yourself in a pretty good position, provided you don't return the favor to those teams. And we were fortunate enough to get some of those 3-point runs when we needed them the most.
And then looking down at 6 through 10, 6 is UC Irvine. They impressed with a pair of victories over Pepperdine. You will be seeing the Anteaters on March 5th on a Sunday. Then Pepperdine dropped to 7th. They flip-flopped with UC Irvine. BYU jumped to 8. Then Stanford and Ohio State are 9th and 10th. So going back a little ways to your schedule, you played in the first point challenge against Pepperdine and Ohio State. What was that first point challenge like? outside of playing those volleyball matches, and what did it mean to play in what's the word that I'm looking for? An event like that. Sorry.
Well, yeah, we actually played Pepperdine and Stanford.
Oh, did I say something else?
In the first point challenge. And Lewis was there also. We didn't play Lewis, but Glenn Litsky did a great job of organizing that tournament for the second year in a row. It was the closest thing that I have come to a tournament that gives you the same feel as an NCAA Final Four, where everything is structured and scheduled and everything's there for you. It provided some really great competition for us, and I tip my hat to Glenn and his crew making that happen. I think it's something that's needed for men's volleyball, especially in areas where there's some initial and fundamental growth of the men's game. I mean, Texas is just starting to turn out some pretty good players, and if we know anything about population centers, right there, you're going to have more and more good athletes to great athletes gravitate toward our game, and if we can help them along and create some more opportunities for them and make it a very attractive option for them, I think that's something that we got to do. And thankfully, Glenn and his group and First Point group, they're doing a wonderful job with just growing the men's game. And if we can help, we're going to do that.
Oh, yeah, and definitely, and this is just a quick little plug, if you're basically tweeting or basically posting on Instagram, use the hashtag NCAA MVB to basically help grow the game of NCAA men's volleyball. Had to get that quick plug in there. So back to the...
Good job.
Thanks, Mark. But back to the men's volleyball coaches poll. So 11 through 15 consists of Ball State at 11 after losing in 5 sets to Lewis. USC at 12, they were idle this week. Loyola at 13, they went 2-0, but they narrowly outlasted Lindenwood, a scrappy Lindenwood team at that. 14 is CSUN, they had a pair of wins over Princeton and NJIT. And 15 is probably the biggest surprise, as that is Charleston, who is one of 4 undefeated teams in NCAA men's volleyball, with the other being Benedict, Hawaii, and Grand Canyon. So Charleston hailing from the EIVA, and Sam also told me about Charleston being underrated and a little under the radar. Mark, what can you tell me about Charleston and how they are basically I wouldn't say a threat, but a possible threat to the EIVA?
Well, all you got to do is ask Sam. I never disagree with Sam. And Sam's dead right. I think Luke Reynolds is doing a great job at Charleston. He's added some stability in coaching. It brings with him a ton of experience from the professional side of things. And I think the guys that have stuck around through Luke's years have really benefited from his expertise. And I'm real anxious. We're not going to see them until the last weekend of the season. So I'm real anxious to see how they go through the EIVA part of their schedule. And I think they have Ohio State, Loyola, and Fort Wayne on their schedule. I have no doubt, one of the biggest things to overcome when you're taking that step is learning how to win. And you do it enough, I don't care who it's against, you get that confidence that, hey, this is what it takes. And then when you're challenged by some bigger, stronger, faster guys, at least you have that confidence and you know how you need to react. And I'm real curious to see what they do, because I think they're going to make waves in the EIVA.
Excellent. And that's actually perfect segue to get into the EIVA. So the EIVA is now only 6 teams. UAll, Princeton, NJIT, Charleston, Harvard, and George Mason. What's your opinion about the EIVA only being 6 teams and how basically every team gets to go into the EIVA tournament?
Well, I think, over the past, I'm going to say easily the past 5 years, there's always been the discussion where when we had 8 to 9 teams in the league, let's take more than 4. And over the years, it was very obvious that if you went deeper than 4, number 5, 6, and 7, they were not going to have a chance to win the EIVA championship. Now, with those 6 teams that we have in the league, any one of them, I mean, Princeton came in last year as a 4 seed. Look what they did. It is to a point now where there is not a ton of difference. And this year, Jay's sitting at George Mason because everybody wants to come there, and he's playing a schedule that's awfully tough. And he might not have the greatest one-loss record at this point, but his guys are going to get some lessons from it. And by the time the end of the year rolls around, they're going to be battle-hardened. So I am looking at this year's EIVA playoffs as maybe one of the toughest playoffs that we as the EIVA have ever seen.
And now that you mentioned George Mason, that is the site of the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament, or National Collegiate Tournament, as you fancy kids like to say it nowadays. Alan Knipe actually attested to this, that he brought his team to George Mason to get familiarity of George Mason University. UCLA brought their team to George Mason. Grand Canyon brought their team to George Mason. Lewis brought their team for familiarity. Will that be the same case for you when you bring your team to George Mason when you play them on Friday and Saturday on April 7th and 8th, or will it just basically be the whole business as usual when you play George Mason?
Well, there's a reason why teams that don't play them with regularity want to get out there. Teams that know that they have a shot at being included into the NCAA tournament, they want to make sure of the logistics approach that they're going to have to take. Because you go through an NCAA tournament, like I said, everything is structured. You have time here, you got to be here, you got to be there. And you need a lay of the land. And I think it's a good move on all these people's parts to come in and take a look at, hey, what do we have to do here? I mean, the last time Mason hosted was 1990. So, it's been a while. And for us, we go there every year. We know where we like to eat at. We know how far away from the gym we're staying. We know different ways to get to the gym. It's not as crucial for us for the logistics part because we've been doing it every year since Mason had a program. So I don't know if it's business as usual, but we certainly need to get down there and compete hard. So that's what we're looking at. It's another EIVA matchup that will be meaningful for us.
All right. So looking at the remainder of your schedule, obviously we'll be getting into the Princeton series and then the NJIT series, but a couple of non-conference games that stick out to me. The UC Irvine matchup. No, currently UC Irvine is number 6. Like I said, you will be traveling down to Irvine to be playing those guys, but another matchup to keep an eye on would be the matchup against Concordia. So I think it was last week. Yeah, last week Loyola played Concordia and Long Beach State, and I saw Concordia against Princeton. When you travel down to California to play Concordia in Irvine, will all eyes first be on Concordia to make sure you don't look ahead to Irvine, just because Concordia does have Uriel Batista and a few other guys that can crush the ball?
I would certainly hope so. I mean, if we start looking past anybody, like I said, everybody has big boys, everybody can inflict damage, and we'll pay for it. So hopefully our team is mature enough to say, all we got to worry about is being 1-0 in our next match, and that next match at that time will be, as we travel down, will be Concordia first, and then win or lose, we flip the script and get ready for Irvine, and then move on from there. So I'm not really big at circling dates on calendars, because I think that just tells everybody that you think that this is more important, when in the end it really isn't. You go, you play hard, you try to get the opponent into your mind as nameless, gray faces out there, and it doesn't matter who's across the net. We just got to be who we are, and if we're good enough, we're good enough. If we're not, we go back to the lab and try to figure out how to get better.
Well, one thing is for certain, I will be at that UC Irvine matchup. I'm definitely taking time out of my Sunday to go to that UC Irvine matchup, and it's sure to be a barn burner. So a pair of matchups that I'm looking at, and you're actually not, in addition to being in California, you're actually heading down to Hawaii. So in addition to traveling to the West Coast, you'll be traveling Hawaii time. So you're going all over the globe. You'll be playing in the Outrigger Challenge against UCLA, so you get a rematch with the Bruins. And then you play Hawaii, the number one team in the nation, the reigning national champion. And then you've got also another talented Purdue-Fort Wayne team who unfortunately had their winning streak snapped against Lindenwood. So what's that Outrigger Challenge going to be like, and what are you looking forward to when playing the Bruins, the Rainbow Warriors, and the Mastodons? Just another opportunity to play some pretty physical volleyball.
I think, certainly John has the Bruins bought into being physical. Charlie does a great job with his Warriors, and I'm always amazed at the hand-to-ball contact that they have, and their third contact ball control is as good as anybody's. And Tal's going to be a guy that goes behind the service line. We got to take care. We got to get him off the service line as much as we can. And then on top of that, he runs a great offense with his hitters. So, and then you got Rock, and boy, the one thing that the Mastodons do, Teran, is they just play so freaking hard, and they just keep coming at you and coming at you. And if you're not willing to keep raising your level of intensity and execution, they're going to make you pay. So 3 nights in a row down there in Hawaii, boy, it's going to be a lot of fun, and it'll show us where we are and what we've got to do for the second half of the season.
Awesome. So before we head on into that ever so highly anticipated Princeton matchup, let's talk about last week's matchup against St. Francis. So you head on the road to take on St. Francis. You fall behind 2-0, and then you win the next 2 sets in close fashion. Then the 5th set, you hit the gas, and you never trail, and there were no ties, and you eventually reverse sweep the Red Flash. Tell me, what did it take to dig deep and reverse sweep St. Francis, being a former EIVA opponent?
Yeah, we played in their gym many times, and they played us. I don't think there's a real, oh my God, look who's in the gym. It's just, they passed the ball pretty well. It wasn't until about early in Game 4 that I thought we started to bring our service pressure back to where we needed it to be, and I think our passing settled down there. Their serving certainly gave us fits in games 1 and 2, and we weren't in sync. They were touching balls enough. They were slowing us down. They get a stuff block here and there, and I think our reaction to it was one of, oh my goodness, we gotta make sure we don't have that happen the next time. And I think we got a little bit too conservative and played right into their hands and let them believe, hey, we can do anything we want. And eventually we righted the ship. We had some great contributions come off the bench and create some opportunities for us, which we were able to take advantage of. And then, like you said, in Game 5, we started out at 100% and hit 619. you put those two numbers together, you're going to be in pretty good shape to win most Game 5s.
In that match against St. Francis, John Kerr led the way with 15 kills. Kerr has kind of been somewhat under the radar, as I didn't even have him on my players to watch for in my EIVA/Penn State preview. What can you say about John Kerr and McCall Cowell and how they have pretty much emerged as other possible weapons for your team to back up Brett and Cal and Toby?
Well, Mihal has been a starter on and off for the last 2-3 years. He's just gotten bigger, stronger, faster, and I think he's kind of figured out how to adapt his Polish style of play that he grew up playing into what's needed for us. The physicality level. He's just a solid player. Always has been. Not been a surprise to us. Johnny Kerr, long drink of water, 6'7", touches about 11'8", long arms. Just a real quiet, unassuming kind of kid. The opposite of fiery. He goes out and he just kind of, as he developed, he'll be back next year for his 5th year. And, as he developed, we could see some flashes here and there. And, I found myself thinking and talking to him, hey, John, can you get a little bit more physical? Can you take a swing? You hit a ball hard at 11-7, you're going to beat most blocks. And you keep it deep in the court, you're going to have some success. And the one thing that John Kerr could always do is he could block balls. And I think that he is just a different type of athlete than Cal Fisher. If we could get both of them on the court at the same time, it could be real interesting. And who knows if that's going to happen or not. But Johnny goes out there and does what we ask him to do, and just plays hard. And he's getting more and more confident with everything that's going on in the game. I think nothing much surprises him anymore.
Now, obviously, you saw the graduation of Will Bantle, your libero. Now, filling in for Will at libero is Ryan Merck, who is only a sophomore, and he had 11 digs in the win over St. Francis. What can you say about Ryan and how he's developed into the libero position only as a sophomore?
Well, I wish you would have seen all last year what Will Bantle would do to Ryan Merck when they would pepper. They were constant pepper partners. They beat each other up. And I don't know if you could say that Ryan Merck, I'm not sure Ryan Merck would agree with you that he moved into Will's position. I think Ryan Merck was saying that Will was keeping Ryan Merck's position warm for him. He's that competitive, and the Will Bantle effect has been seen in Ryan's first month of playing against the guys he played against. The kid can pass the ball. The kid can dig the ball. And he's just going to refine the libero position for us in the next 3.5 years. That the next guy after Ryan Merck will be somebody that people will be saying, can he do what Ryan did? Just like we're saying, is Ryan going to do what Will did? So, real pleased with him. Great on-court personality. He's learning how to be more and more vocal. I think the sky's the limit for that kid.
Excellent. So now for every Penn State fan out there, or Penn State men's volleyball fan out there, for the moment they've been waiting for, the little preview against Princeton. So obviously it's the first time the two teams have played since last April, where that fateful matchup that saw Princeton come out on top happened. So what is this matchup going to be about, and what are you looking forward to when facing Princeton, and what could we expect from Rec Hall?
Well, the interesting thing is on Friday night we're going to open up the EIVA season down in South Gym, because we have I think we have a women's gymnastics meet going on in Main Gym. Oh. So it's going to be a little bit tighter, a little bit more intimate. It'll probably be more comfortable for Princeton because South Gym is very similar to Dillon Gym and in just the sight lines and how everything is kind of packed together. Sam's going to have his guys ready. O'Mani's going to be somebody that we got to make sure we're aware of in the middle, but Ben Harrington has been playing points galore for them from behind the service line, from the left side antenna. They're going to see Ben out of the Bic, and we've got to make sure that we make him earn every point that he gets, and he's going to get his. We've got to find some ways to slow him down here and there and see if we can turn some of those opportunities for points for us. We got to make sure we bring service pressure and force them into some pretty predictable swings. And if we can do that, and if we can pick up the ball and run it back at them, I think it's going to be a great battle in the middle between Toby and O'Mani. They were together for the Pan Am group this past summer. I was on that group, and it'll be fun to watch. I think Sam's doing a real nice job with the guys that he has, and it's certainly going to be a challenge.
It'll be the battle of two guests on set point in terms of coaches. So before we close out the interview, I have a few other couple questions. So who have been some of your more memorable players you've coached at Penn State or coached in general?
Yeah, the easy answers to that are Maddie, Max, and Aaron, Yvonne Contreras, Eddie Josefowski, the household names, if you will, of Penn State men's volleyball in my era. But we've had some outstanding young guys come through the program and do some really good things out there. Ed Hurricane, who was the other middle opposite Yvonne on 94 team, and Kev was All-America, I think, through 95 and 96, and he is now the CEO of Cisco, the business logistics company in the U.S. that gets all the product to supermarkets and restaurants, and Kev's busy saving the world through this pandemic, and he's always been somebody that has come out of the program and certainly from the university that is everything you want a Penn State student-athlete to be. Dan Pollock is a CEO in San Francisco. We've had our fair share of guys coming out that have worked real hard at what they do. And while they may not be the outside hitter that Aaron Russell is or the point scorer that Maddie is, it's just tough to put your finger on one guy here or one guy there. They're just love them all. The time I had with them was way too short, but I learned so much from each and every one of them. They're a lot of fun to be around. Dennis Del Valle, the libero from that 08 team when he was a freshman, he's still playing. And Eddie Goaz, center from the 2011 team, still playing in Puerto Rico. It's great to see these guys still loving the sport that they grew up in, and just taking the opportunity to still have the joy in playing it that we saw every day in our training gym. Watch them play in uniform. So it's just been great to have those guys wander through our office and allow us to be part of their lives for 4 years or more.
Awesome. Great answers. And one last question. So, obviously, I am not native to Pennsylvania, and obviously there are other people that don't live in Pennsylvania, but if I ever want to come down to Pennsylvania or Happy Valley in particular, where should I go to get the best food to eat near Happy Valley or Penn State?
Depends on what you're hungry for. Do you want cheesesteaks? Do you want pizza? Do you want a sit-down dinner? We got them all. And I just sent my good friend Andy Reid and Alan Knight grilled stickies from what used to be the old college diner. It's a Penn State delicacy. So we got everything for you. Ice cream. We got the creamery. Why you haven't been here simply for the food alone, I think has just knocked your reputation down a few notches in my eyes, bud. The volleyball stuff, forget about it. The food, if you're talking food and you haven't been here yet, oh, come on. Let's get rolling through this.
Be right back. I'm about to order a plane ticket to go down there. I'm definitely taking your advice, Mark. But on that note, thank you very much, Mark, for being part of the show. If you can hold on just for a little bit so I can give you a proper goodbye, that would be amazing. But that is Mark Pavlik, my guest, the Penn State men's volleyball coach. I appreciate you coming on here. Any more information you want to give out to anybody, or any more thank yous or shout outs you want to give out to?
I just think that your audience is very involved with the men's game. It's growing. Support the men's game. Even if you're in a situation where the closest men's collegiate team is hours away, find a men's a boys club team, a high school boys team, support them. I think we're at a point where the game is growing on the men's side. We're seeing some outstanding young athletes playing the game. It's just going to get better and better. So I just implore your audience, keep supporting the men's game and help it grow whatever way you can. We're all going to be better off for it. And then maybe you can write off it to get to State College just to try some of our grilled stickies and creamery ice cream.
Yes, definitely do that. I would definitely recommend. I will definitely do my best to try to go up there. But thank you, Mark Pavlik, for being a guest on the show. We will take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When I come back, I will be breaking down the VNL schedule, and I'll be discussing the NVA news, and I'll be discussing a little bit more NCAA men's volleyball action that happened. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host. Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Definitely do check out all of our amazing shows, such as The Show That Never Sleeps with Harrison Glazer and Pierre Moss, Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson, and Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick. By the way, thank you to Adam Karnick, who popped in the chat room and he listened to pretty much the entire interview. I really do appreciate you listening. I also have to give a shout out to Adam. He detected some audio issues in the beginning. It wasn't big-time audio issues, but thank you for catching the choppiness. I appreciate you finding it and bringing it to my attention. So for those that did hear the choppiness, I sincerely apologize. I tried my hardest to make sure I had the correct mic settings, but it is what it is. So if you hear choppiness, then feel free to just lash out at me in the comments section or to my Twitter. But I digress. Also, thank you to Larry B for popping into the chat room. He says, such a great show. I appreciate you. Also, thank you to Patty Bax for listening over on Spreaker. She said that I was a natural. I really do appreciate her tuning in. But back to the second half. Before we do so, IE Sports Radio is what made this interview with Mark Pavlik happen, as they were able to get Set Point live, and they're what's making Set Point go live. Follow IE Sports Radio. Please do so on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. Also, follow them on Facebook for those that still use it, as they basically, all you just got to do is type in IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar, then click the IE Sports Radio icon, like us, and then follow us, and then poof, you're getting your sports fix every single week. And then IE Sports Radio has a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go to the top, you'll see a Patreon link there, and when you click it, Patreon links will start off. Once you click that Patreon link, everything will start off at $5 a month once you start donating. This will get you a shout from all of our amazing shows, including this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to ISRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, we have been by the fans and for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports, and thank you for all of your support. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, Marcus Losgrid, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. And with all that said and done, let's get back into the second half of the show. But first, thank you to Mark Pavlik for being a guest on the show. It really means a lot that he was able to take time out of his night, and he even said that he should have been in bed a couple hours ago. So thank you to Mark. I really do appreciate you. All right, so now let's get on into that second half action. So, recapping some of the other matchups that happened in week number 6, like I said, UC Irvine took down Pepperdine both times. They won the first matchup in 5 sets in Malibu. UC Irvine was led by Francesco Sani, as he had 17 kills. Cole Gillis, 15 kills, as the Anteaters had 9 service aces, while they also had 16 blocks compared to Pepperdine's 6 blocks. Pepperdine was led by Joe DeLuzio, who had 19 kills. Jalen Jasper had himself not the greatest night, as he only had 16 kills. He had 14 hitting errors. Akhenaken Wumi had 12 kills. So for Pepperdine, it was just one of those matches. The two met again on Friday, but this time it was in Irvine, where the Anteaters once again emerged victorious, winning in 4 sets, as the Anteaters were led by Francesco Sani, who had 15 kills. Hilaire Heno had 10 kills. Cole Gillis had 7 kills. As a team, UC Irvine hit 290, and UC Irvine once again served the living daylight out of that ball, as they had 13 service aces to only 12 service errors, and UC Irvine also had 14 blocks compared to Pepperdine's 6. So UC Irvine really out-blocked and out-aced Pepperdine throughout the entire week. Between those two matches, they really showed that last week against BYU was a little bit, I wouldn't say fluky, not against BYU, against Grand Canyon. It was just more so Grand Canyon being better than them. Just UC Irvine just ran into a buzzsaw that was Grand Canyon. This time against Pepperdine, they were a lot more smoother, and they just won the serving and blocking battle, and they hit efficiently. Pepperdine was led by Jalen Jasper, who had 16 kills, but he had 11 hitting errors. So Pepperdine did a really poor job of getting everyone else involved, while UC Irvine did an excellent job of just shutting down Pepperdine's top hitters. Ryan Barnett had 12 kills for the Waves. Despite the hitting errors from the Waves, Pepperdine hit 266, which isn't bad, and I'll give Pepperdine this. They did outdig UC Irvine 34-25, which isn't terrible, but it's like you're going to need a whole lot more than that if you want to beat a team like UC Irvine, especially on the road. Then on Thursday in MIVA action, we had Lewis taking down the Ball State Cardinals in Muncie in 5 sets, over 1,100 in attendance, and the Lewis Flyers took down the Ball State Cardinals in 5 sets. The 5th set was super dramatic. It was won 18-16 as those Flyers flew off with their biggest win of the season. Keep in mind, last week they lost to a George Mason team who was winless going into that match, as the Flyers were led by Christian Prayer, who had 16 kills. Max Roque had 14 kills. Lewis hit 254. This just goes back to what I said last week, as I talked to John Hawks, as we both totally agreed that Lewis is definitely underrated. I think they're the most underappreciated team in the MIVA. Obviously, they had that loss to George Mason. They haven't really had too many standout wins, but they've played a tough schedule. They played Stanford, Pepperdine, UC Irvine, BYU. They've gotten some of their tough matchups out of the way, and this definitely prepared them for Ball State. Ball State was led by Tinaishi Davazocheva, who had 27 kills, while Dyer Ball had 15 kills. Surprisingly, Caleb Jennis did play, but he only had 2 kills, and he only played 2 sets, so this kind of makes me wonder, did Caleb Jennis get hurt or something, or was he just off his game? It's something you gotta ponder if you're Ball State. They eventually bounced back and wound up winning their second matchup against McKendree on Saturday, but you kind of have to wonder, is the MIVA wide open for Ohio State and Loyola? Both teams went 2-0 in MIVA play last weekend, as both those two will be facing each other this week, but more on that later, as those two basically on a crash course. But Lewis, that's a good win for Lewis, beating Ball State on the road. And then other matchups that we had was that BYU defeated UC Santa Barbara both times. I alluded this earlier when Mark Pavlik and I went over the top 15. UC Santa Barbara fell out of the top 15, and Charleston took their place as Santa Barbara lost to BYU both times. Anthony Churfan led the way for BYU in the first match with 14 kills and a .600 hitting percentage. He also added 9 digs. Trent Moser, 14 kills. Mix Raminis, 10 kills. Reed Barnett led UC Santa Barbara in the first match with 19 kills and 11 digs. Ryan Wilcox had 13 kills and 8 digs. Saturday, in the first match, BYU won 22-25, 25-19, 25-23, and 25-20. The second matchup on Saturday, BYU won 25-19, 25-20, 19-25, and 25-17. Mix Raminis led the way for BYU with 19 kills. He hit .486. Trent Moser, 15 kills. He hit .333. Heath Hughes, 46 assists, 15 digs. UC Santa Barbara was led by Ryan Wilcox, who had 12 kills, but that was kind of their only bright spot, as UC Santa Barbara kind of disappointed, and this kind of was their biggest alarming thing about them. It's like, yes, they had the big win over at Pepperdine, but were they going to survive in the Smithfield House in Provo? That was my biggest concern going into that matchup. Then, jumping back to Friday, we had Hawaii taking down Stanford, not once but twice. They beat Hawaii in 3 sets, and then they also beat Hawaii in 3 sets on Saturday. First matchup, Hawaii won 25-22, 25-19, 26-24. Demetrios Mouchilas led the way with 12 kills. He hit .391. Spiros Chakas had 11 kills. He hit .375. Will Rotman led Stanford with 13 kills, while Theo Snowy had 9 kills. Hawaii out-hit Stanford 440 to 276, as those Rainbow Warriors, they're looking really, really good. And then the Rainbow Warriors did it again. They swept Stanford a second time. This was in Stanford, by the way. They swept Stanford both times on back-to-back nights. Hawaii won the second match 27-25, 25-19, 25-19. Mouchilas led the way with 17 kills. He hit .517, while Will Rotman led the way with 13 kills, hitting .320. Hawaii outblocked Stanford 12.5 to 6 and out-hit Stanford 333 to 258. So, believe it or not, Hawaii has won 9 in a row. They're 9-0, and like I said, they're one of 4 undefeated teams in NCAA men's volleyball. And in addition, the last 7 matches, they've swept their opponents. Now, most of their opponents they've swept obviously haven't been the most glamorous opponents, but the sweeps against Stanford, they had to go from Hawaii to Northern California, and they swept the Cardinal. Keep in mind, this is a Stanford team that's in the top 10. Is Hawaii going to three-peat this year? It's a little early to say that, but those Rainbow Warriors look very legit. I'm not trying to jinx them anything. I'm not trying to put them on a pedestal, but you look at the firepower that they have. They have Jakob Tele serving fireballs from the service line. Demetrios Mouchilas has really come alive. Spiros Chakas also coming up big. Guillermo Voss coming up big in the middle. We even had a libero kill from Brett Sheward, and he has been doing superb for the Rainbow Warriors. So everything has just been clicking for Hawaii. This week they've got Concordia Irvine in Hawaii, and I don't think they'll be challenged until they play Pepperdine in a couple more weeks, but who knows what's going to happen. And they'll play Pepperdine in Hawaii. But also remember that they do have the Outrigger Challenge as well, so that's going to be something to watch for. And man, I can't wait to see Penn State and UCLA play Hawaii. That's going to be a barn burner. Also got to give a shout out to Marcus Losgreat. He says, salute one. I appreciate you, Marcus, for tuning in. Salute to you, too. Then jumping back to Saturday, we had number 11 Ohio State keeping up the winning streak as they pushed the winning streak to 3 games as they swept Lewis 25-23, 25-22, 25-19. They beat McKendree in 4 in their MIVA opener, as leading the Buckeyes in the win was Samuel Clark, who had 14 kills. He hit .394. Jack Stevens, 11 kills. Jacob Pasteur, 10 kills. He hit 400. Max Roque led Lewis with 16 kills. Christian Prayer, 10 kills. Ohio State out-hit Lewis by 100, 378 to 278. So those Buckeyes, they're undefeated, and there's something scary to watch for. So got to keep an eye on those Buckeyes. You can't let them get hot, as they could possibly pose a threat, because Ball State has kind of looked a little vulnerable. Yes, they've had that other hitter, Tanaishi. I'm probably butchering his name, and I apologize if I am, but they obviously are looking real. Ball State's not looking the best. I mean, obviously not without Caleb Jensen having his monster performances, but if Ohio State continues this and Loyola continues this, they could potentially snag that Big West, or not the Big West, the MIVA from under everyone's noses. And honestly, I would not be surprised, just because Loyola is good and so is Ohio State. Like, those two return a majority of their starters, so don't be surprised if that happens. And unfortunately, on Sunday, George Mason at NJIT got postponed due to COVID-19 protocols within the Patriots program. So the two will be looking to reschedule that matchup, so hopefully they will. But that is that for a majority of the matchups, except we have two more matchups I need to go over, and that is the Long Beach State UCLA matchups. So I didn't go to the first one, but the first matchup, UCLA just laid down the wood against the beach. They swept Long Beach State, handing them their first loss, 25-19, 25-21, 25-20, as UCLA was led by Ito David, who had 17 kills. He hit 696, and Alex Knight contributed with 12 kills. He hit 579. As a team, UCLA only had 6 hitting errors. That is how you're going to win games. And even though UCLA had 23 service errors, they really put pressure on Long Beach State at the service line, and they hit so efficiently. It was just a great, clean game for the Bruins in that match, as UCLA as a team hit 551. That's just bonkers right there. Long Beach State only hit 190, as they were led by Sotiris Chiapanis, who had 13 kills. He almost had half the kills that Long Beach State had, as their next kill leader was Simon Torwi, who had 6 kills. But that was the first matchup. Now, the second matchup I attended in Long Beach, and it was such a barn burner. It was so packed. It was 4,138 in attendance. It was so packed, the cell reception was just not getting through for my phone. I could not post video clips properly without a major delay. But this matchup was so legendary. The first match, the first set, I basically went over this matchup on my Twitter, but the first matchup, or the first set, Long Beach State and UCLA went toe-to-toe with one another. It was tied 10-10. Long Beach State went on a 6-2 run, and eventually Long Beach State never trailed after that, as they took the first set 25-18. Then in the second set, it looked as if Long Beach State was going to go up 2-0, and then UCLA started really serving well. UCLA eventually took that second set 25-21. Then the third set, it was back and forth, but UCLA established a 15-11 lead, and then Long Beach State really came alive late in the set, as they eventually went up 25-22, and the home crowd was getting really into it. And I was thinking it would be quite something if Long Beach State won this set. But UCLA won the last 3 points. They won off of a block, and eventually they won that third set 25-23. Then the fourth set, Long Beach State had a brief lead, and then UCLA was nibbling away at the lead. They eventually caught the lead at 18-17, and the two teams went back and forth. And eventually Long Beach State, just like set 3, they led 23-22, but then UCLA led 24-23. And on match point, this was quite interesting. I don't understand this. I don't understand why Long Beach State did not set the middle. They set Sotiris, which, it's not a bad idea, but it's so obvious. Obviously, Long Beach State is going to set their most hot hitter in Sotos, or Sotiris. his teammates and the coaching staff at Long Beach call him Sotos. But it was obvious that they were going to set Sotiris, and Merrick McHenry and Grant Sloan were able to block that easily, and UCLA was able to win the match. Now, I understand that UCLA served really tough on that final serve from Andrew Rowan, and it wasn't really the cleanest serve looking back at it, but you still got to find a way to mix it up, and you just can't be super obvious with feeding the ball to Sotos. Like, what about Clark Godbold? Clark could have definitely crushed the ball. Spencer Olivier also could have slammed down the Bic. I also, again, in the middle could have also been efficiently hit as well. Yes, this was probably maybe the worst match for the middles, just because they had a combined 4 hitting errors after having no hitting errors from your middles, but still, I still think it could have been, the middles could have been more involved, but it is what it is. To each his own, like I said. UCLA didn't have the big-time hitting numbers, but Ethan Champlin led the way with 12 kills. Alex Knight had 11 kills. Merrick McHenry had 10 kills. Long Beach State was led by Sotiris Chiapanis, who had 17 kills, while Spencer Olivier had 14 kills. He at 407. Shane Holdaway and Clark Godbold each had 10 kills. Despite Long Beach State losing, they hit 340, and one thing that Alan Knipe liked about Long Beach State in the match was that they hit. Was that they had a lot of Long Beach grit and determination, which I totally agree with. I definitely think that they showed a lot of grit and determination. However, I just think that they left a little meat on the bone when it comes to both of their matchups. And I don't think anyone should panic over this matchup, because Alan Knipe did also say that they had a few guys out with injury, and he said that one guy had surgery. I don't think it was a key guy. But one player that I liked in that match was Spencer Olivier. Considering he had not the greatest performance last week against Loyola, I think this was a great bounce-back game. Yes, there was obviously the previous game against UCLA, the previous game against UCLA at UCLA, but John Speraw said it best. Long Beach State did not show their true potential. So for Long Beach State to nearly force a fifth set, I think it still goes to show that Long Beach State still has it. And I think for people that are overreacting about this loss, I think you're pretty silly if you ask me. So overall, for Long Beach State, it's back to the drawing board for them as they host NJIT, while UCLA has their MPSF opener against BYU at home. So that is that for the NCAA men's volleyball matches for week number 6. Previewing the NCAA men's volleyball matches for week number 7. So Wednesday and Friday, we have GCU at USC in the MPSF opener for both teams. This is an interesting matchup. So the Lopes take on USC on the road. So it's one thing for GCU to be fairly good at home, but can they be good against a young USC team? Now, my problem is for USC is, can they beat a very stout and red-hot GCU team? With a young team like that, it looks fairly doubtful. I'm not trying to say that they're going to lose badly, but I feel they're going to have to not lean on Dylan Klein all the time. They have to get Simon Gallas involved quite a bit, as well as some of their other big-time hitters. I think it's doable that they could win just because GCU has to go from Arizona to Southern California, but I wouldn't say it's going to be a cakewalk. Then on Thursday, we have Ball State at Loyola, and to keep on the MIVA train, we have Ohio State at Purdue Fort Wayne. So Loyola is home for their 2 MIVA matchups this week, while Ohio State is on the road this week. So for Loyola, this is the biggest trap game for them, and this is their biggest week of the season in terms of the MIVA for the time being. As they've got Ball State, which is looking to get back on track after having a dreadful week, which saw them lose to Lewis and beat McKendree in 4. And now they have a good chunk of ground to make up, just because Ohio State is looking good, and then Loyola is also looking fairly decent as well. So for Ball State, they have to get back into the W column in a big way. I mean, they are in the W column, yes, but obviously they were going to beat McKendree. I'm not trying to say McKendree is bad, but I knew that they were going to bounce back against McKendree. Like, Ball State is way too good of a team to see them lose 2 in a row or go 0-2 in MIVA play. As for Ohio State and Purdue-Fort Wayne, so I was going to take this matchup off just because Purdue-Fort Wayne lost to Lindenwood last Thursday, which snapped their 8-match winning streak. But I think Purdue-Fort Wayne can actually prove to be a threat. And Lindenwood's announcer, their play-by-play guy, said it to me best. The MIVA is so deep, and I definitely agree with him. It's not just going to be Ball State that's good. Ohio State's really good. They're very solid. Loyola is good. They showed me a lot. Lewis is very underrated. Lindenwood could possibly be a threat. Even McKendree could possibly make some noise. So the MIVA is very wide open, and there's not going to be one team that's going to be a heavy favorite. And heck, the MIVA tournament could be a bloodbath. I think any team could possibly win that tournament. Maybe. We'll see. But for Ohio State, they just can't underestimate Purdue-Fort Wayne. Purdue-Fort Wayne doesn't have the greatest wins in the world, but beating Lindenwood is not that bad. And it would be so terrible for them to overlook Purdue-Fort Wayne and basically look too far ahead against Loyola, just because this is big boy volleyball, and if you overlook your opponent, you're basically going to pay the price. And Ohio State's too good of a team to overlook a team like Purdue-Fort Wayne. Then on Friday and on Saturday, like I said, we have BYU at UCLA. This is going to be a decent matchup just because I talked with Ethan Champlin and John Speraw about the MPSF improving. Every team is drastically improved, and that stock continues to rise as those Bruins, it's not going to be as easy to take down BYU as most people thought they would. Most people thought BYU was going to be in the cellar and they were going to be struggling with their matches, but they have surprised a whole lot of people. They've even surprised me. With the amount of wins that they've had against certain teams like UC Irvine and Ball State, on the road, mind you, I think they've shown us that they can do some damage, and they could, hence the word could, possibly get a few wins here and there. And then also on Friday and on Saturday, we have Pepperdine at Stanford, also in MPSF play, and this is my match of the week right here. So this is going to be Pepperdine at Stanford, which is basically number 7 Pepperdine at number 9 Stanford. So this matchup is going to be super fun. And I was going to put BYU UCLA as the match of the week, but I think Pepperdine and Stanford is a very good matchup just because it's a rematch of the MPSF finals. You have to watch this matchup if you're able to. Get it on the Pac-12 network or get it wherever it's available. But this Stanford-Pepperdine matchup is going to be a barn burner. Stanford obviously lost both its matches as well as Pepperdine last week. This is the matchup of who's going to start 1-0, if not 2-0, in MPSF play. Every MPSF match really matters, and who knows, maybe these two teams could be on a collision course to face one another in the MPSF finals yet again. Stanford is really good. Will Rotman is a beast. Theo Snowy has emerged really well as a freshman. And for Pepperdine, Jalen Jasper is him. Obviously, last week, he ran into a brick wall, no pun intended, as UC Irvine really just stuck it to him. But for those Waves, this week is a big week, and this is where it truly starts to get real for them, just because they know they can't afford too many mistakes in MPSF play. And winning at Stanford is going to be very tricky just because Stanford is a fairly good home team. Last week did not do it any justice just because Hawaii is just such a darn good team. Like, that team, it would not be surprising if they three-peated this year. But overall, for Stanford, it's going to be so tricky for the Waves to win, especially since both teams are coming off losses. But we'll see what happens with Stanford and Pepperdine. And then on Friday and on Saturday, as I mentioned with Mark Pavlik. We have Princeton at Penn State, the EIVA opener for both teams. So this is a rematch of last year's EIVA semifinal where Princeton ultimately won in 5 sets. Obviously, this is going to be a big-time matchup. The first matchup is going to be played in the South Gym, as Mark alluded to. There is going to be a gymnastics meet in the rec hall, but expect that gymnasium to be rocking. And then Saturday, it will be played at rec hall. Definitely do check that matchup out on Big Ten Network, or if you're in the area in Happy Valley, do check that matchup out. It's sure to be a barn burner. I think Penn State has that match in the back of their minds, but I'm pretty sure that loss is still going to sting, and as long as they don't let that loss truly affect them or truly, override them, I think Penn State should be fine. I'm not trying to say Princeton is going to get trounced by Penn State. I just think that Penn State is playing some darn good volleyball, and last week obviously was a near blip on the radar. Obviously, Penn State showed great grit at the end. Obviously, Penn State has had some really good wins. Their only loss was to Long Beach State, which, everyone could say that they're a very good team. Princeton's had some solid wins here and there, but Princeton is looking for that first ranked win of the season. And what better way to do it than to win on the road in Happy Valley against Penn State? So we'll see what happens between the Tigers and the Nittany Lions. And then closing out the Week 7 matchups to watch for is Ohio State at Loyola. This is possibly for first place in the MIVA. Both of these teams are coming in 2-0 in MIVA play, and these two teams, oh boy. If Ball State continues to be where they're at, and if Loyola and Ohio State continue to be the class of the MIVA, this could basically be for a possible spot in the NCAA tournament. And definitely keep an eye on Loyola, just because Loyola obviously had the 2 blips on the radar in terms of the 5-set loss to Long Beach State and the 4-set loss to Concordia Irvine. But they didn't really play too terrible. The loss against Long Beach, they nearly took down Long Beach State. Just a few mishaps here and there, and then they possibly take that match. But Ohio State is a solid team, and I really think that those Buckeyes are going to make Loyola work. It's going to be played in Chicago in the Gentile Arena. It's going to be a barn burner. Expect the unexpected. Expect chaos. Expect haymakers. Expect just madness. Probably expect that match to go 5, just because Loyola and Ohio State are just 2 very good teams. And that's pretty much going to do it for all the matches for all the matches to watch for in NCAA Men's Volleyball Division 1-2, or National Collegiate Men's Volleyball matches to watch for in week number 7. So before my brain gets fried, we have some NVA news to discuss. Yes, we have more NVA news to discuss. That's right, y'all, because once again, like I said last week, I, Teran Rodriguez, am your one-stop shop for all things NVA news. And this NVA news was popped on Saturday, as this came from the NVA itself, as the NBA announced a new team. Okay, let's not get too overdramatic, sound effects guy, but but the NBA announced a new team. So this new team that has been announced in the NVA is, can we get a drum roll, please? The new team being introduced in the NVA, the National Volleyball Association, is the Puerto Rico Pythons. So, yeah, a team from outside North America. That is quite amazing. The Puerto Rico Pythons. I'm rather impressed. The NVA is really growing. I would have never predicted Puerto Rico But that is absolutely amazing. So Puerto Rico Pythons are the new team to be announced. They are the second new team to be announced, as last week the NBA officially announced the Philadelphia Founders, which leaves one more team left to be announced. Who will that team be? We shall see. But for right now, you'll have to wait and see. But until then, that's all your NBA news. From me, Teran Rodriguez, your one-stop shop for all things NBA news. Alright, so before we head on out, we have one more bit of, we have a few more bits of volleyball news. And this one actually comes from another pro volleyball league. This one comes from the Pro Volleyball Federation, as Danny White and Jason Derulo, yes, Jason Derulo, just purchased a franchise, a Pro Volleyball Federation franchise in, can we get a drum roll please? Omaha, Nebraska. So, yeah. You thought Nebraska was big in terms of volleyball when it came to the Nebraska Huskers? Well, it got even bigger, just because now there's pro volleyball in Omaha, Nebraska. So, just when y'all thought Nebraska wasn't going to get any bigger when it came to volleyball, it just got even bigger. That's pretty much that, as there was a press release when it came to the Pro Volleyball Federation, and this is huge for the state of Nebraska. I think this is absolutely big time, just because after the NCAA women's volleyball season, obviously there's no NCAA men's volleyball in terms of Nebraska, unless you like to count like high school, but then I guess there's like NCAA beach volleyball for Nebraska. But that's just in its infancy stages. But with this being a pro league, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be awesome for the sport. And I think this is going to be quite astounding. And I can't wait to see what happens with this Pro Volleyball Federation team from Omaha, Nebraska. Alright, so that is that for that little chunk of news. So next up, we have the VNL. Yes, the VNL releasing its schedule for the 2023 season. Yes, the VNL has released its schedule, and I'm going to try to skim through this schedule as fast as I can, just because we are already near 100 minutes. Just because that interview with Mark Pavlik, well, time flies when you have fun with your guests, but the VNL schedule has been released, and boy howdy, this is going to be quite the fun VNL schedule, and I really can't wait. So I want to say I have the men's and women's schedule on default, but I guess we'll start off with the women's schedule, just because it's ladies first. So the ladies start the season off on May 30th. So it starts from May 30th, and then I'm not going to go over all the matches, and that goes to May 31st, then to June 1st. And these matchups will be played in either Turkey or Japan. And then it goes all the way down to June 4th. Then it takes a little break. Then it goes from June 13th, and that's when the location shifts from Hong Kong, China, as well as Brasilia, Brazil, and then that little round robin goes all the way down to June 18th. Then the location shifts yet again, as it goes from June 27th, as it goes from Bangkok, Thailand, to Suwon, Korea, and that will go all the way to July 2nd, and then July 12th begins the final round, as, get this, you're going to like this, volleyball fans. The final round will be played in Arlington, which is located in Texas. So if you're in the Texas area, definitely do check this out. Definitely check out that little thing, as the final round goes from July 12th all the way to July 16th, where, like I said, the final round will be played in Arlington, Texas, which is located in the good old US of A. So that is that for the women's side of the VNL. So jumping on over to the men's side of the VNL, everything for the VNL on the men's side starts on June 6th as the first round robin starts in Nagoya, Japan, as well as Ottawa, Canada, which I think that's cool. So everything starts on June 6th, and it goes all the way down to June 11th. Then the next round robin goes from June 20th, and the locations go from Rotterdam, Netherlands to I'm probably going to butcher this. Orleans, France. It's not Orleans, probably. It's Orleans, France. As it goes from June 20th all the way down to June 25th. And then on July 4th, prepare to be astounded, volleyball fans in California, such as myself. So July 4th is when the next round robin starts, as Pasay City, Philippines is one of the host sites. And then the other host site is located in the United States, and it will be located in Anaheim. So I imagine they'll be playing in the Anaheim Convention Center. So if you live in California, or Southern California for that matter, you are going to... This is basically a dream come true. Now, July 4th is obviously going to be tough, and the U.S. doesn't play on that weekend, but the U.S. does play on July 5th when they play Cuba. So definitely check that matchup out right there. The U.S. does not play on July 6th in Anaheim, but they do play on July 7th when they play Argentina, and then on July 8th they play France in Anaheim, and then on July 9th they play Bulgaria, which, man, that's gonna be so awesome to see. Like, I really, really hope I am able to see any of those matchups, and if I can get into those matchups for free, that would be awesome, or at least have like a media pass. That would be awesome sauce. But if not, then so be it. If I have to watch as a spectator, then so be it. Another thing I gotta hope for is, I hope this doesn't intervene with, like, the NVA. Hopefully this doesn't fall on an NVA weekend, just because if it does, then I'm going to be sad-faced, because I have to pick between one or the other, and I don't want to miss... this would be the greatest chance to see the U.S. national team. And then the final round will be from July 19th all the way down to July 23rd, and it will not be held in Anaheim, which I'm sorry to everyone that lives in California, but it will be held in Poland. It's going to be located in Dansk, Poland. If I mispronounced that, I am so sorry to anyone that's Polish. You all can basically throw your tomatoes at me, but it's going to be located in Poland, and that's going to be where the final round is. So that's basically the entire VNL schedule. I'm not going to go over all of the matchups just because, again, that's too time constraining. I'm going to go over all the matchups once the VNL arrives. And who knows, maybe I'll be able to have John Speraw as a possible guest. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Alright, but that is going to do it for the VNL portion of the show. Now we got to close off with some NCAA women's volleyball transfers, and then I'll send you all on your way because this is one long episode. And I've also got some announcement news toward the end of the show. So, NCAA women's volleyball transfer news. So, this happened on Wednesday, as this transfer hails from UC Irvine, as this is Oni Ofobu, as she is a middle blocker, graduate student, as she transfers from UC Irvine to Oregon. Now, Oregon has already gotten some talented players, such as Mac Pedraza, and with Oni Ofobu, who is also an All-American honorable mention, that's quite amazing. So, Oregon struck gold with her. She is a diamond in the rough. She had 380 kills, which was second on the team, and she had 143 blocks, which was the team leader. So Oregon is really looking good for next season. Then we had Imani Foster, who transfers from Charlotte to North Carolina. So she stays in the state, but she will be transferring to the University of North Carolina. She had 502 kills with Charlotte, and she had 227 digs, which was second on the team, and she had 22 aces, which was second on the team, and she had 40 blocks, which was fourth on the team. So if North Carolina can utilize Foster just like Charlotte did, I think they could, hence the word could, that's a big could, make some noise. I mean, I think she's like 5'10". She's not like Courtney Basario height, but it's better than nothing. I mean, that's still pretty solid. Like, it's tough to get 500 kills in a season. It really just is. No matter what team you play on. It just is so tough. Then we jump on over to the West Coast Conference as Camille Hiapo transfers from Arizona to BYU. Now, this is a very good transfer just because BYU's liberos both graduated, as Hiapo had 457 digs as she transfers to Provo. As, again, that's big time right there, considering there was a big question mark for BYU at the libero position. It was either going to be Hiapo at libero, or it was going to be Abby Dayton, who I don't even know if she's going to be back, but time will tell. And then Mississippi State picked up Alexa Fortin, who is who was a part of Georgia's 6-2 offense, and she was third on the team in digs, as Emily Orther is also in the fold for Mississippi State. So this kind of makes me wonder, does Mississippi State go 6-2 as well? Orther was a transfer from Penn State, so I kind of wonder, do they go with a 6-2 offense, or do they just roll with 4-10? It's a time will tell process. And then the last transfer, and this also happened on Saturday. This was the biggest transfer right here in terms of transfer news. We have Annie Evans, the former Nebraska setter, who is going to be a senior, not a graduate student, a senior this year, as she is transferring from Nebraska to San Diego. So you remember when San Diego managed to snag Gabby Blossom from the transfer portal? Now they got Annie Evans, who has at least one more year of eligibility remaining. She could take the COVID year as well, but now San Diego has figured out their setter question mark, as this is a huge pickup for them, as they get that veteran presence from Nebraska. And she's also another Big Ten setter, so that's big time right there. Like, those Big Ten setters are a different breed. I'm just saying, y'all. So that is pretty much that for all of the transfers right there, or at least the notable ones from last week. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Before we head on out, I do want to mention next week, barring any setbacks, next week's guest will be Miguel Monterola, the Las Vegas Ramblers volleyball coach, as well as the head volleyball coach of Aliso Niguel High School. So keep on the lookout for that. Yes, the men's volleyball coach at the Las Vegas Ramblers of the NVA. But with that said and done, it is that time for me to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, I apologize for the choppiness and the technical issues at the beginning. I will put a disclaimer, or not a disclaimer, a heads up in the description once I edit it. Huge thank you to Mark Pavlik for being my guest. I really do appreciate him being a guest in the first half of the show. Also, thank you to the live chat room. Adam Karnick, you are the real MVP for catching the technical issues. Thank you to Larry B for also popping into the chat room. Thank you to Patty Becks that also listen, and thank you to Marcus Lewis Great that also listen. For my guest, Mark Pavlik, and for IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself an amazing weekend. Have yourself an amazing week. Enjoy the volleyball action. I will see you all most likely Friday for SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I will also see you all Saturday for the NJIT Long Beach State men's volleyball match. I might have another high school volleyball match that I'm attending to just because it's the first week of the NCAA, or not NCAA, the high school volleyball season in California. but time will tell. Until then, have yourself a great week, enjoy the volleyball action, and I will see you Friday for SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!